Hello friends, my name is Carlos Rios and I'm a video game composer. I find pixel art to be a particularly inspiring form of art, and so I spend most of my time composing music that I imagine best represents a pixel world or scene. In every episode, I'm going to be showing you my process for creating video game music inspired by a specific piece of pixel art. Today's track was inspired by the art of Marcistro Aurelius Primus. Sorry dude, I probably butchered your name. He also goes by Gimbuk on Instagram, and you should definitely check out his work. Super inspiring stuff. I really enjoy it. And so this right here is the pixel art that inspired today's track, and I came up with a super creative title called Dragon Encounter. Anyway, here's my process. I hope you enjoy it. So the first thing I do is I spend 3 hours just staring at the art, or I mean a very long time just staring at the art. And then some ideas start popping up, maybe certain instruments come to mind, certain melodic ideas, certain chord progressions, but honestly more often than not there's just nothing, and I just need to start playing stuff and trying out different sounds and whatnot. For this particular track though, I could definitely hear some church organ sounding music stuff, you know, like some of Jay's Bach's Prelude in D. And so that's how I got started with the track. And from there, I knew that I was just going to be adding some percussion and some synth leads, following B section, etc. You know, and so whenever you have that much stuff in your head, it's like, okay, it's time to actually start just buckling down and composing. Okay, so for the composition phase, for the instrumentation, I wanted to have some organ sounds, like I said before, but also I decided I wanted a bit more of a fuller sound in this opening section, and so I decided to include some pizzicato strings. And I like that a lot, but when it comes to pixel art inspired music, I try to make sure that it sounds that the sounds are not too realistic. The whole aesthetic of pixel art is it's telling a story or depicting some kind of circumstance with as little information as possible, visual in this case. And so to do that with music, I added some distortion to the strings to make it sound a little less realistic. Transitioning into the A section after this introduction, it was kind of tricky, but I knew I wanted to have a chord progression with a chromatic descending bass line, and so this is what I came up with. And the next section is the main section of the track. Drums are this simple rhythm right here. Now for the drums and some of the strings later, I'm using this plugin right here, is Nils Kawaii K1V digital synthesizer emulation, but I just call it K1V because it's a lot easier. I use this synth a lot, and it's mostly just because it is awesome and also because it's free. And I've had it for a long time. The harmony on the section is played with a combination of pizzicato strings, the organ, and then this super cool string pad, also from K1V. And when it comes to the bass,
checkmate.
I went with a fairly traditional approach for chiptune style music, which is I used a triangle wave. You know, consoles back in the day couldn't play low-end stuff very clearly, especially if you think about something like the Game Boy, right? With that tiny little speaker, you really can't hear the low end, and so what happened is composer used triangle waves to play the bass because you can hear the high frequencies of a triangle wave very clearly. And so this allows the listener to kind of imagine the lower frequencies that are being accented by the higher overtones of the wave. By the way, for my 8-bit sounds, I use another free plugin called Magical 8-bit Plug 2, and it is also free, and you should definitely go check it out. The lead in this section is a heavily processed pulse wave. This is the melody without processing. Okay, then I add a little reverb a little bit of stereo spread because it's like dead in the middle right now, and then a little equalizing. After I do these three things, then I get to use my favorite secret tool in Logic Pro, which is the pedal board. I add a distortion pedal and a chorus pedal. I'm a guitar player, so this is just my language. And then I use a phaser pedal, and this is how the square wave sounds after processing. Now, I wanted the melody here to be its own thing, but to resemble the opening organ section enough so that I could later transition back into it. And then with another transition, which is this same descending bass line from before, but this time is longer, so we're going down half step, half step, half step the whole time. We land into the B section. We go back to the A section, and here we have a longer lead with different processing in the square waves. Once I enter the mixing stage, I do a few things. First, I just need to get organized because otherwise it's impossible and it takes too long to get anything done. So I color code the different parts. Leads are pink, harmony embellishments are this sort of purple, the bass is this weird tealish color, and drums are yellow. Drums are always yellow. Then I have to get rid of these stupid icons. I hate them, they just take up space. Also, I make sure that all of the instrument tracks have some kind of meaningful name so that whenever I'm doing edits and further processing, I can easily identify the track. So once I'm organized, I actually start the mixing process. I understand some of the fundamentals of mixing and I apply them as best as I can, but my expertise is in the area of actually writing music and composing. So take the things that I say about mixing here with a grain of salt. Although I think of these three phases of music production, you know, as the dream phase and the composition phase and the mixing phase. There's no real reason why you can't mix them up to some degree. It is useful to build restraints to help you focus on specific processes at a time, but don't create such restraining limitations that there's no room for creativity. You know, sometimes I do a little bit of dreaming during the composition phase, and I often do mixing during the composition phase as well. And sometimes I do dreaming on the mixing phase. I'm there and I'm like, oh man, I have this whole new idea. And sometimes you have to get rid of the entire thing and start new. This is making stuff, making music. And so it is okay to use your ear and it is okay to follow your intuition. And what does your gut tell you right now? Yeah, it tells you to like this video and to subscribe and that hit that notification bell. Yeah, do it, follow your intuition. Once I'm organized, here are the steps for the mixing phase. And it's gain staging. Okay, you gotta make sure that the source levels for all your instruments are as close as possible to what you want them to sound like in the end. And when I say at the source, right, I mean don't use the faders, don't use the mixer's faders yet, not yet. Instead, open the instrument that is playing the music and see if there's a gain knob somewhere or a fader built into the instrument. If there isn't, I usually add a plugin from Logic, such as this one, okay? So when it comes to volume control, actually using the faders, now what I do is I listen to the song, which is gonna be in a loop a couple of times, and I make subtle adjustments to the volume using the faders. I like to use the Logic Remote app on my iPad for this because I like being able to touch the screen and move the faders that way. I mostly just use my ear here. I'm like with everything, I just go with my intuition. You know, you learn a lot of the objective technical aspects of making the music, but in the end you're making music, so you have to use your ear, you have to use your gut and your intuition. Now when it comes to panning, I mostly just, again, use my ear. If it feels like the stereo field is a little empty on the left or on the right, I make sure to add something to fill in that space. EQing is another super important part, so every track needs to have room to breathe, and the overall mix needs to sound full but clear. You gotta be able to hear all the individual instruments. I make sure that instruments mostly occupy the frequency that they need to be occupying. So some tracks have parts where the low volume parts are too low and the high volume highs are too high. So compressor helps bring those volume levels closer together and make the tracks tighter, punchier, and then sound like they belong together, which is kind of a tricky thing to do. But you know, it takes time, it takes practice, and learning to use your ear more and more. When it comes to reverb, I try to have one reverb that I can filter my instruments through, all of them if I can, although sometimes it's nice having different reverbs. So for the most part, I do this. It's more economic on my CPU. So for automation, I automate strings and pads to create swells because they usually sound kind of stale otherwise. So if there are certain instruments that you want to sound louder in some sections than others, then you can also automate the volume. Now mastering, okay? This is a very technical aspect of the music production process. It really takes a master to do mastering right, and I'm neither a master nor can I afford one. I use this tool called Ozone, and it helps me do the final layer of EQing on the output stereo mix, and then some stereo imaging, and then I use a limiter to bring out the volume levels of the whole thing up, and that's about as much as I do. The track is available on Spotify and iTunes and all the other things. It is a part of a collection. This track is part of a collection that I will be slowly revealing over the following months, along with a video similar to this one for some of them, hopefully. And I hope you come along for the ride. Do subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment. I really want to know what you think about this video format. It's the first time that I try something like this, and yeah, I want to know your input to see if it works, or if it's too boring, or if it's too technical, or if it's not technical enough. You gotta let me know. Thank you so much for stopping by. Until next time, goodbye.